Subjectively speaking, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is my favourite Sonic game. Heck, it's my favourite video game of all time, but objectively speaking, now that changes things, because then Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles might just be the better game overall. Before we get into the reasons why, yes, I am looking at the combined Sonic 3 and Knuckles. It's no secret these two games were originally supposed to be a single release. The European box art even had Part 1 written on it, although that subtitle was removed prior to launch. What I didn't know is that, according to the history of Sonic the Hedgehog, the game was split in two to meet a February 1994 release deadline imposed by a McDonald's Happy Meal promotion. In fact, the game didn't reach Japan until May 1994, a rare instance of us getting a title first back then, because the development team still hoped to release it as a single package there. The combined cartridge is also the only way to play as Knuckles in Sonic 3's levels and Tails in SNK's stages. The new Super Emeralds, the Hyperform they unlock, Secret Final Stage, and True Ending, all of which we'll discuss in detail later on, can only be accessed through lock-on technology. Imagine if that happened today, in a time where people are angry Final Fantasy VII Remake only covers events up to escaping Midgar, and Asura's Wrath is still derided for locking its ending behind DLC. In 1994, we actually praised this as being innovative, revolutionary, and generally pretty cool. There are some other changes. Some level layouts and object placements are different between the standalone and combined games, and a few of the music tracks are swapped out too. To be honest, it's mostly minor stuff a lot of players might not notice unless it was pointed out to them, and in the majority of cases, I prefer the new versions. That said, there's some content that can only be accessed by separating the cartridges. Sonic only fights the Big Arm boss in the base Sonic 3. The Hedgehog skips that fight in S3 and K. Knuckles gets to go up against it instead. Knuckles has a short intro cutscene in S and K where Egg Robo drops a bomb on him, giving the Echidna his motivation. But when locked on, Knuckles just gets a cold open in Angel Island Zone. Sadly, there aren't many ways to play the combined Sonic 3 and Knuckles. In fact, right now there are only two options that are still available for purchase as new and playable on current technology, those being the Steam release and the Xbox 360 versions that can be bought and played on Xbox One. Even then, it's not immediately obvious you can do it in the Xbox versions, and besides that, they have a fatal flaw which removes them from consideration entirely. Sonic 3 was the first in the series to offer a save game feature with 6 slots available. Beating the game gives you access to a level select which allows you to mop up any emeralds you may have missed. The Xbox version skipped that in favour of their own menu, resulting in only having 3 save states for the 4 playthroughs the game offers, and never being able to unlock the level select, meaning replaying the whole game to revisit your favourite levels. If we're looking solely at official releases where you can still monetarily support Sega, because I definitely overscoped the Sonic 2 video, the Steam version is pretty much your only worthwhile option. There is, however, an amazing fan-made release that's said to require owning the Steam version, Angel Island Revisited, or AIR for short. This offers 16:9 widescreen similar to the Whitehead ports of Sonic 1, 2, and CD, lets you toggle between different music tracks and level layouts, adds achievements and unlockables like the Drop Dash, Super Peel Out, and a Knuckles and Tails mode, along with including a host of quality of life enhancements like smooth rotations. It also addresses previously missing content, restoring Sonic's Big Arm fight and setting Knuckles' Rude Awakening in Angel Island. Although this does mean he starts in a completely different area of Act 1 than he usually would. I played through both versions for this video. You can assume any 16:9 footage is AIR and any 4 free gameplay is from Steam. I absolutely recommend the Steam version, and if you're buying that anyway and don't mind some technically grey legality, you should grab AIR too. Alright, with that out of the way, how can I view this game as being objectively better than Sonic 2? In terms of sheer numbers, there's simply more of everything. Sonic 2 has 12 zones, S3 and K has 14. Sonic 2 has 7 emeralds and 7 special stages to unlock them in, 3 and K doubles that to 14. Sonic 2 has 2 playable characters, 3 and K adds Knuckles to the mix to bring that up to 3, with unique gameplay styles for all of them. Knuckles is very much the tough guy who's able to use brute force. He can smash through barriers Sonic can't break to unlock new routes. He can climb walls to pull himself up to new areas, and he can glide over large gaps. Knuckles does have a lower jump height, so it's harder for him to get on top of bosses like Sonic can, and it also locks him out of some of Sonic's routes through levels. The Red Echidna has his own campaign, which can see him tackling entirely different and more platforming-heavy versions of certain zones, complete with unique bosses. It makes sense. In Sonic's campaign, Knuckles frequently appears from a hidden path or alcove and activates traps to screw the Hedgehog over, but when we're playing as Knuckles, we can take advantage of those same hidden tunnels. This is his home, it's his territory. The campaign also seems to take place after Sonic's, as something of an epilogue. Evidence of this is that the Sandopolis ghosts only appear after Sonic frees them, but are already present when Knuckles enters the stage. The Death Egg can be seen in the background of Sonic's lava reef, but not Knuckles' run. The Sky Sanctuary has been greatly reduced in size after we saw it crumble as Sonic. The floating island's in the background, meaning it's already been raised from the sea by Sonic, and the Master Emerald is here rather than being in either the Hidden Palace Zone or Robotnik's possession. Some people think of Knuckles as a hard mode, but I disagree. He presents a different challenge, sure, but it's not necessarily more difficult. Knuckles has a much shorter campaign than Sonic. His Hidden Palace is literally just a case of running from one end of the room to the other, and I'm not sure why it's even here. Maybe they had bigger plans, but ran out of time. His Sky Sanctuary consists of one boss fight that starts straight away, and he never visits the Death Egg or Doomsday zones. Effectively, his Lava Reef Act 2, where they admittedly do throw everything at you, is his last stage. Knuckles also gets to skip certain bosses. His Carnival Night, for example, closes out with no showdown to speak of. Likewise, his Lava Reef ends abruptly with a corridor taking you straight to Hidden Palace. Knuckles provides something brand new, but existing characters have also been improved. Tails can now fly and swim, giving him more versatility and differentiating his playstyle from Sonic's. In Sonic 3 Air, you can even use Tails to carry Sonic to higher platforms with just a single controller, emphasizing their teamwork and friendship. I will say the number of times it happened accidentally and caused me to lose rings outweighed the number of times I did it on purpose and actually benefited from it though. I'm told the same trick's possible with just one pad in the original release, but I couldn't get it to work. Sonic himself now has an instant shield which appears if you press jump while already in mid-air. This can negate incoming damage and increase Sonic's hitbox to hurt enemies that are just out of reach. I know speedrunners use it a lot, but personally I rarely manage to use it properly. That's replaced by new abilities altogether when Sonic grabs another new addition, Elemental Shields. Shields now come in 3 varieties: Bubble, Flame, and Lightning. With Sonic, each of the shields also gives him a new ability. The Bubble Shield is maybe the most situational. It gives you a bounce jump that's kind of meh, but the big advantage is you can breathe underwater, making it more or less essential for Hydro City. The Fire Shield is a definite contender. You can do this dash jump, which is great for clearing massive gaps. You're also immune to any and all fire damage, so this shield flat out breaks Lava Reef in two. My absolute favourite is the Lightning Shield because it draws in nearby rings and gives you a double jump. You're also immune to electrical attacks and hazards, so you can breeze through some areas of the Death Egg with this shield. Another change for the better is how super forms are handled. In Sonic 2, if you had 50 rings and you jumped, you were turning super whether you wanted to or not. In Sonic 3 and Knuckles, you now have to press jump twice to transform. Sadly, this does mean that once you've got 50 rings, you can't use Sonic's Insta-Shield, and Knuckles can't glide or climb walls without transforming. Air addresses this by assigning the super forms to the Y button on an Xbox controller. Even better, you can cancel out the form at any time by pressing Y again, allowing you to conserve rings and use it in bursts like an optimized Kaioken. There will be times when your super form's automatically reverted by the game. For example, you're not allowed to transform during this final chase sequence despite being allowed to form during the previous parts of the fight. More importantly, a hyper form has been added. This is super, but even faster, with added after images, and in Sonic's case, a pseudo double jump that clears all enemies on screen. Not only that, but this time everyone gets a super form. Sonic and Knuckles can go super after collecting all 7 Chaos Emeralds, unlocking hyper forms by then collecting the 7 Super Emeralds as well. Tails, on the other hand, only gets the super form and only after getting all 14 emeralds. Ah well, at least Sega are finally acknowledging the form with a Funko Pop. There's decent incentive to go after the emeralds this time too. Having them gives you access to the true final stage, Doomsday Zone, and the good ending. Doomsday actually started a bit of a tradition for flashy final battles as Super Sonic with unconventional gameplay. Unlocking the forms is actually pretty easy this time. To get into a special stage, all you have to do is find a massive ring hidden in the level and jump into it. There's no other prerequisites. There are over 70 of these rings scattered throughout the game, so even with 14 emeralds to collect, you get around 5 attempts at each of them. Some of these are tucked away incredibly well, and it encourages exploration, a good incentive to try out new routes and reach new areas on repeat playthroughs. Once you've gathered the emeralds, finding a big ring will grant you 50 rings, enough to transform, so you still have good reason to hunt them down. The special stages themselves are incredibly memorable and simple. All you have to do is collect all of the blue balls while avoiding the red ones. There's a faux 3D effect created with palette shifting, which gives the illusion the Mega Drive's doing things it shouldn't be capable of. This is the most control you have over your character in a mainline special stage. It ultimately feels very fair compared to what's come before and after. The only problem is, it doesn't feel very Sonic. Although gameplay speeds up over time, it still has a much slower, more methodical and relaxed pace than the main game. You can go for an additional challenge of collecting all of the rings in the special stage too. Some are just sitting out in the open, but you'll get the rest by tracing the outline of blocks of blue orbs to turn them into rings. You get a huge score boost for this, and several continues to go along with it, but it adds so much risk to the stage that the reward simply isn't worth potentially making a silly mistake and missing out on an emerald for it. They can also get really frustrating when there's only a handful of blues left and you have no idea where they are. I've played this game enough times to more or less memorize these stages, and yet there was still times when I found myself scouring the board for the final 4 balls. I've got to give credit to how the emeralds are woven into the story this time. They don't feel like an afterthought for once. The opening shows us Super Sonic, we can see the end goal. We're shown Knuckles punching the emeralds out of him.
You punched the highlights out of her hair. He punched the highlights out of her hair!
This provides continuity with the previous games and lets us know why Sonic no longer has the gems or his transformation. There's an immediate incentive for the player to get them back. Not only that, but you naturally hate Knuckles and need to get even with him from the very start of the game. The Super Emeralds are introduced in a fantastic sequence where you see Knuckles emerge from a hidden passageway. Checking it out gets you transported to a mysterious room, and the Chaos Emeralds fly off to become gigantic. You come back here every time you attempt a Super Emerald special stage. It's implied that this is their home. This is where they belong. Later, you actually find yourself in that room in Hidden Palace, so you know what the Master Emerald is when you see Robotnik steal it. You know it's important. When you see Knuckles fighting so hard to retrieve it, you understand he's been trying to protect it this entire time. You even get to see the Master Emerald's power firsthand. You see the Death Egg rise after it's stolen. Robotnik uses it as the core of his massive mech at the end. Mecha Sonic hops on it to take on a super form. The entirety of the floating island takes to the skies again when you return it to its rightful place. Sonic 3 and Knuckles does an incredible job of visual storytelling. None of the characters utter a single word throughout the entire game, and yet you know exactly what's happening. Knuckles blocks you at every single turn. You get to have a showdown with him in front of a mural depicting the events of Doomsday Zone. You see him immediately start helping you without question after Robotnik shows his true colours. Although I have no idea why Tails has decided to ruin this particular scene. The Death Egg is a constant looming threat. It's in the background of the launch base zone. After stopping its launch, you see it again in the background of Lava Reef. You see what it can do when it activates and turns the cool blue stage a magma red. You see it launching at the start of Sky Sanctuary, spilling out egg robos to terrorize the level's inhabitants. You see Sonic climb to jump inside it. Even just those level transitions provide a real sense of place and scale. Sonic 3 and Knuckles manages to add significantly to the lore of Sonic's world, and when combined with its length and narrative structure, makes this the first game in the series to feel like a grand, epic adventure. That feeling's brought down slightly by the game's relative ease. This is partly my fault. I get all of the emeralds before the end of Hydro City Act 2 and rinse the rest of the game, but even without a super form, the game doesn't put up much of a fight. Here's me in Lava Reef, one of the later levels, with around 500 rings and almost 60 lives. Okay, yeah, slight flex, I'm sorry. No, I'm not. Most of the bosses and mini-bosses can be abused by either constantly bouncing on them or taking advantage of the one-ring health system. My favourite battle in the game, aerial combat between the main duo and Robotnik, can practically be over before it even begins because Robotnik's vulnerable when he first drops down. I remember Super Mecha Sonic being a terrifying and difficult boss when I was a kid, but on this run through as an adult, I beat him and his simple patterns fairly quickly and easily. I was certainly underwhelmed by the majority of the fights. I also couldn't help but notice the stages were more gimmicky than Sonic 2. We're all familiar with the infamous Carnival Night Barrel and the skippable roller coasters in the Death Egg, but I found these spinning tops you have to fly around on to be far more annoying than either of them. Every level seems to have at least one unique mechanic, and while that's admirable, it can really kill the pacing. Thankfully, the game looks great. I'm not overly keen on the use of 3D models converted into sprites. I think the hand-drawn 2D assets look far better, but this was an era where everyone was chasing Donkey Kong Country's aesthetic. Weirdly, while Sonic and Knuckles look like they're at least based on a 3D model, Tails seems hand-drawn and out of place. I'm not a fan of Sonic's sleeker look and changed proportions here. Thankfully, Mania went back to his Sonic 1 and 2 design, and disparity is all the more apparent when he's running alongside a Tails that seems to recycle and touch up keyframes from Sonic 2. This is really noticeable when Tails transitions from the new art of his flying and swimming animations to what looks like his old idle and running animations. If you really want to see what I'm talking about, go back to playing as Knuckles in Sonic 2 and just look at how out of place his sprites are stylistically when compared with the enemies and stages. A lot of the character art in Sonic 3 and Knuckles seems rounder and shinier. The badniks and hazards especially seem to be very reflective and polished. It's a change to the shading and rendering style more than anything else. It's similar to how Jim Lee's X-Men was reprinted with a new colorist. Despite using the same line art, everything has a different sense of volume, texture, and material. See, this is where we've moved from those objective measures of it has more levels, it has more playable characters, different characters have distinct playstyles, to the subjective areas of I prefer the old artwork. Likewise, the same applies for the music. The confusing tales of Michael Jackson's involvement aside, Ice Cap Zone is probably one of my favourite tracks from any game, let alone any Sonic game, but I'm honestly hard-pressed to pick out many other favourites. Sky Sanctuary's music is outstanding and a real highlight, but there are some tunes I actively dislike too. Carnival Night Zone's bouncy, juvenile clown music irritates me, and doesn't suit the on-screen action whatsoever. The tempo's completely out of sync with the pace of Sonic's movements. Sonic 2 had strong melodies that felt very video gamey, while this title tries to emulate the era's pop music with mixed results. While the soundtrack was contemporary at the time, it's since dated the game and prevented the tracks from standing out on their own. Generally speaking, the soundtrack lacks cohesion. We know from the beta and PC builds that the music was revised. The credits list 7 music composers compared to Sonic 2 having just one, Masato Nakamura. I think this is a simple case of too many cooks spoiling the broth, resulting in an eclectic track list of varying quality. These are the kind of things I'm talking about when I say I recognise Sonic 3 and Knuckles is probably the better game, but Sonic 2's still my favourite. That may sound whimsical and flimsy to you, but I just never connected with this outing the same way I did for Sonic 2. I absolutely and wholeheartedly recommend Sonic 3 and Knuckles. If this is your personal favourite, then I completely get why. My tastes are just a bit different to yours. Sadly, Sega have all but forgotten about this game. It's absent from the PS4, Xbox One, and Switch Mega Drive collection. They're not on the Mega Drive Mini, they never got the Whitehead treatment, there's no plans for a Sega Ages release on Switch. Steam and the Xbox Store are really the only places you can still buy it. Some think it's a rights issue with the music. If that's the case, I don't understand why existing versions haven't been pulled down, or why they don't just use the PC soundtrack for future releases. Whatever the case, get them now before they're possibly gone for good. Thank you for watching this video. It's only been one of the harder ones to make. It's taken some time to really sort through exactly how I feel about Sonic 3 and Knuckles. And there are some special thanks I wanted to give just before I close the video out. So first of all, to my friend Terry, who I've mentioned before, we had a discussion on the music of Sonic 3 compared to Sonic 2, and that actually influenced the script for that section. I did end up going back and rewriting some bits to sort of influence our conversation. It made me think about some things that I otherwise might not have considered, so I really appreciated that. Also, this might sound weird, but my childhood friend Catherine, her older brother was the first person to show me the Doomsday Zone and sort of the point of the lock-on technology. Without that, I might never have played the full Sonic 3 and Knuckles when I was a kid. I might have just kept playing the cartridges separately, being a dum-dum, even though, you know, it's right on the back of the box, right here, telling me what I need to do, but, you know, you tell an 8-year-old that and see how far you get. The other special thanks I wanted to give was to Richard Elson and Nigel Kitching. They did the Sonic the Comic adaptation of the story, and if you've not read it, go for it, find it out. It is fantastic, especially the fight between Sonic, Knuckles, and Mecha Sonic. It's got some of the best artwork in comics, full stop, and it's just a really, really fun read. It really helped bring that story to life, and it provided some context for the game that, you know, I can pick up on the visual cues and environmental storytelling I talked about now as an adult at 31, but as a kid, a lot of that went straight over my head, and it was through those comics really that I came to understand more of what was going on, even though Nigel admittedly took some liberties with the script and changed a few things to better suit the comics continuity. But yeah, I will be back. There is still a lot more Sonic to cover. There's still a lot of other games that I just generally want to talk about. So this is far from the end. Subscribe, hit the bell, tell your friends, comment, like the video, all that good stuff, and I will be back with you as soon as I can.